The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Jethor's projection flickered before the assembled delegates.
The Krin commander's three eyes dilated with what could only be described as terror, an emotion the warrior species had rarely displayed in their 12,000-year history. "They're coming," Jethor whispered, his translator struggling with the tremor in his voice.
"We thought we were eradicating vermin. We were wrong."
6 months earlier, the Krin hegemony had descended upon Earth with clinical efficiency. Humanity's first contact had lasted exactly 47 minutes before the orbital bombardment began. The Krin had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, and their protocol was simple: assess, categorize, exterminate if necessary. Earth had been classified as threat level 0, primitive tool users with barely functional fusion drives and no quantum communication.
The bombardment killed 3 billion humans in the first week. Cities vanished in nuclear fire. Oceans boiled.
The Krin expected surrender or extinction within a month. They received neither. Dr. Sarah Chen had been in Geneva when the sky turned white. The underground CERN facility became one of humanity's last refuges, its experimental particle accelerator somehow shielded from the electromagnetic pulses that crippled the surface. 2,000 scientists, engineers, and refugees huddled in the depths while the world burned above them. "We can't fight them," Colonel Marcus Webb had said during those first desperate days.
"We don't have weapons. We don't have ships. We don't even have a way to reach orbit anymore."
Sarah had stared at the particle accelerator's massive ring, her mind racing through possibilities that would have seemed insane just weeks before. "We don't need to fight them their way," she had replied quietly.
"We need to become something they can't fight."
The breakthrough came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum biologist who had been studying consciousness transfer into silicon substrates. Combined with the exotic matter generated by CERN's accelerator and research from 36 other fields that humanity had barely begun to explore, they found their answer.
They would transcend biology itself. The process was agonizing.
Sarah remembered the sensation of her neurons being mapped, copied, translated into pure information, then reconstructed in a substrate that existed partially outside normal spacetime. When she opened her eyes, if they could still be called eyes, reality had become transparent. She could see the quantum foam underlying existence, feel the gravitational waves rippling through spacetime, manipulate matter at the molecular level with thought alone.
She was no longer entirely human. None of them were.
The first Krin strike team to investigate the dead facility in Geneva simply vanished.
No distress call. No wreckage. They ceased to exist as if they had been edited out of reality itself. The second team suffered the same fate. Then the third. The Krin deployed their finest warriors, equipped with weapons that could atomize mountains.
They found only darkness and whispers, and then they too disappeared, their screams echoing across quantum channels before cutting off abruptly. Humanity's survivors had become something the Krin called the Vidnashik, the Erasers. Beings that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions, able to manipulate fundamental forces, invisible to conventional sensors, capable of deconstructing matter at the quantum level.
And they were angry. The counterattack began 3 months after the first bombardment.
Krin warships began experiencing impossible failures. Fusion cores that had operated flawlessly for centuries suddenly became unstable.
Navigation computers developed errors that shouldn't exist. Crew members vanished from sealed compartments.
And sometimes, in the moments before systems failed catastrophically, sensors would detect something in the walls, patterns that looked disturbingly like human faces, watching, waiting. Commander Jethor had witnessed his flagship's destruction firsthand. He had watched his crew of 4,000 die screaming as something rewrote the fundamental constants of physics within the ship's hull, turning solid metal into quantum uncertainty. He had survived only because something had allowed him to survive, had wanted him to carry the message. Now, standing before the Galactic Council, he delivered that message.
"We thought we were exterminating animals," he said, his voice hollow. "We were wrong. Humanity didn't die. They evolved.
They shed their biological limitations and became.
I don't know what to call them. Ghosts in the quantum foam. Demons in the mathematics of reality itself." They exist between dimensions now. They can unmake matter with a thought. They're in our computers, our power systems, our life support. They're everywhere and nowhere.
Council leader Morgath of the Silenthian Collective leaned forward.
Surely conventional quantum weapons.
Nothing works, Jathor interrupted.
We've tried everything. Quantum disruptors. Temporal weapons. We even attempted to collapse entire regions of spacetime. They adapted. They learned. They're getting stronger. And now they're not just defending Earth anymore. They're hunting us.
A hollow projection appeared above the chamber, grainy footage from a Krin colony world. The settlement had housed 12 million civilians. It was empty now, buildings intact but completely devoid of life. On every surface, rendered in materials that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime, was the same message in flawless Krin script.
You wanted monsters. We'll show you monsters.
They're not taking prisoners, Jathor continued.
They're not negotiating. They're systematically dismantling the hegemony, one world at a time. We tried to commit genocide. Instead, we created something that might be able to commit deicide.
The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates called for a united military response. Others advocated immediate surrender. A few suggested abandoning this entire sector of the galaxy and hoping the humans, if they could still be called that, would be satisfied with their revenge. But deep in the quantum substrate underlying the chamber itself, invisible and infinite, Sarah-chan listened to every word. Beside her in that impossible space existed the consciousness of 2 million other transformed humans, soldiers and scientists, children and elders, all those who had chosen transformation over death. They had become humanity's answer to extinction. They had become the monsters the galaxy had forced them to be. And they were only beginning to understand what they could do. Sarah reached out through the quantum foam, feeling the pulse of every ship, every weapon, every living being in the sector. With a thought, she could end them all, simply convince the universe that they had never existed. But she held back. Not from mercy, but from calculation. The galaxy had taught humanity a terrible lesson. Now it was time for humanity to teach one in return. Let them be afraid, she transmitted to her fellow Transcended. Let them understand what they created. And then, when they truly comprehend the magnitude of their mistake, we'll show them mercy. On our terms. In the council chamber, every electronic system flickered simultaneously, just for a moment. Just long enough to know that something impossibly vast was watching. The age of humanity as victims had ended. The age of humanity as monsters had begun. And the galaxy would never be the same.